Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard, learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome. Today we have Tischa van der Reep. She is a Christian writer, speaker, and teacher. She's also the founder of the Well Communicators, originally from Trinidad and Tobago. Tischa is married to Harold. He's a Dutchman, and they now live in Texas with their 2 teenage sons. Tischa's writing and speaking style uses her compelling testimony to make scripture relatable to real life while encouraging and challenging her audience. Her goal is to create a sense of belonging for women who may consider themselves outside of God's love, favor, and grace. Welcome, Tischa.
Hi, so nice to be here.
I'm really excited to have a conversation with you and to share some of your story with our listeners.
Yes, I'm really excited too. I've been looking forward to this.
So let's just jump right in. In some cases, I like to just start right at the beginning and ask, like, would you tell us a bit about your childhood?
Sure. I actually had a wonderful childhood, very blessed. Grew up in an upper middle class home. On the Caribbean island of Trinidad. So just a lot of beauty and then a lot of culture and music. Trinidad actually has one of the best carnivals in the world. We invented steel pan and calypso and limbo. And so we have a very rich culture. Yeah. And my uncle was actually one of the top people for Children's Carnival in Trinidad. So I've been in costume since I was 3 years old. And so just grew up really with a big family, loving family, vibrant culture, beautiful scenery, and of course, tropical climate. So it really was a joyous childhood. I was a bookworm and a generally very happy child. But when I was a little girl, I was molested by an older cousin, and that kind of put a heavy taint on what was otherwise an idyllic childhood.
I'm so sorry. Things like that can just really color your memory.
Yes.
So with that happening, were you able to share that with anyone?
Now, at the time, I was very aware that I had done nothing wrong, even though somehow I still carried the shame and guilt of it. Yeah. And I didn't want to disappoint the adults in my family, particularly my grandparents. And so I kept it to myself. And so it was something that I carried alone. As a little girl, you just don't understand. You know, kids have this tendency to feel responsible for things. Yes. And sometimes even responsible for the adults in their life. And I didn't want to be responsible for hurting my grandmother in particular. And so I carried it. I also grew up Catholic. And so whenever we would go to church and there would be Jesus on the cross, I really saw him as looking down at me, kind of accusing, as if you did this to me, because I was aware that what had happened to me was sinful
Yeah.
And I really had this distorted view of the gospel where I saw that that what I had done caused his death somehow.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you talk about a burden.
Yeah.
I mean, to look at Jesus and not be able to feel all the encouragement and love of why he went to the cross, but to feel like you kind of put him there, that sounds unbearable.
Yes, yes. It was it made me run from him for a long time, even into adulthood. It
Yeah,
made me avoid him.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
And there was no one really to be able to steer you the right way and explain
Well,
all of that.
yeah, it's interesting because it's really a matter of semantics, really. You know, you hear all the time, Jesus died for our sin, Jesus died for our sin.
Yeah.
And so my understanding was just that our sin put an innocent man to death. And I really missed the whole part that he willingly died for us, that he willingly died in order to save us, that that was the only way we could be saved. I just thought that he was
Hmm.
God. He was sinless. He came on earth to teach us and to be with us because he loved us so much. And because we were so wicked and bad, we put him to death.
Wow.
And so that was just my whole understanding of the gospel at the
So,
time.
so
And
that was the foundation of kind of what you believed back then.
yes, so that was yeah, that was the start of my faith walk. It was you know, God was fine,
Yeah.
but Jesus and it wasn't that Jesus was bad.
Yeah.
Um I just felt so guilty. You know, if you do somebody wrong and you just don't want to be around them because you don't want
Yeah.
to face
Yeah.
them. And so I
Wow.
just didn't want to face him.
Isn't it crazy how we have these lies that we believe when we're younger and they become the foundation for the way we build the rest of our life,
Yeah.
and it could continue that way forever until we actually meet Jesus. Wow. That's amazing.
Yes, yeah. You actually define yourself according to
Yeah.
lies, and yeah, it's really dangerous.
Yeah, it just changes the trajectory of your life.
Yes, absolutely.
So, building on that, what was
Mhm.
your life like as a teenager? Once you'd been through this and once you were kind of carrying that kind of thought of guilt and shame when you encountered Jesus, or some other things that happened in your teenage life?
So, as a teenager, I acted out a lot. I was very rebellious. I was always in trouble in school.
Wow.
I was I went to an all girls high school run by nuns, so you know, chapel time and all those things were never easy for someone like me.
Yeah.
Um, I was in trouble a lot, and then you know, I was the party girl, and I used to just love to just be out of the house and hang out with my friends, and I missed curfew almost every time. And then when I was 18, I had a very traumatic experience. I had a crush on a boy. I chased boys a lot. I think what had happened to me as a child led me to want their attention a lot.
Yeah.
And so I had a crush on a boy, and I got the guts to call his house. He had no idea who I was. And his older brother answered the phone and said he wasn't home, but if I come over, then I would be there when he arrived. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I
Mm.
went to the house, and the older brother raped me.
Oh my gosh.
And I was 18 at the time. And yeah, so that kind of any part of me that was wounded before was fully damaged by then. And so I just kind of felt like I was a lost cause at that point. I felt worthless. And everywhere I went after the rape, you know, it's small, everybody knows everybody, a lot of people, you go to the same places, you know, the young people are from my part of the island.
Right.
And so everywhere I went that he was at, if he saw me, he would yell out what he did to me. He would yell out horrific profanities about me. And so
Wow.
it wasn't just shame that I carried internally, it was shame that I was subjected to everywhere I went.
Oh my goodness. Was there anyone? Now, first of all, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Was there anyone that stood up for you?
No, no, at the time, nobody, he was a very notorious bully, and so everyone just kind of laughed along with him because they didn't want him
To
to
deal with.
aim his attention at them.
Yeah.
And I just denied everything that happened. I refused to acknowledge that anything he was saying was true. It was just really very
But
embarrassing and
to have
very
somebody yelling that out in front of
Yeah.
other people, I mean, when you're trying to just make your way through the trauma, I
Yeah.
can't imagine what that was like.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, hanging out with friends at the beach, at carnival festivals and parties and clubs. I mean, literally everywhere I went that he was at, it
Wow.
happened. And it happened for years. And it was really, really hard.
Wow. Did you continue to get in trouble and kind of break curfew and do all those things?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I worked for my dad for a couple years, and my work ethic was deplorable. I would go out to lunch and come back hours later. I was, it was just really, with partying, with hanging out with boys. I just made one bad decision after another. And then I went away to college. When I was 20, I went to Miami to college. And so then I was on my own, and I worked hard, but I also played hard. I got drunk a lot and partied a lot, and I was promiscuous.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of bad decisions, which actually resulted in me being homeless in my last semester of college.
Wow.
So it just, I was really just a victim of myself, for the most part.
Well, do you think that trying to be in control, as I'm listening to you talk about some of the things that occurred, trying to be in control, like not following the rules, was your way of taking some kind of control of your life? Like, so I'm not going to listen to anybody else's rules. I'm going to do what I want to do because these other people did what they wanted to do. Do you think there was any of that?
Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe I felt a little damned if I do, damned if I don't kind of thing.
Yeah.
As well, where, it didn't matter. People were just going to take advantage of me anyway. I was a lost cause anyway. I didn't think that I was worth doing well. I didn't think I was worth success. And so I self-sabotaged a lot. I was always pretty bright. And so I did well in school with very little effort. And so it was possible to do well in school, but then just completely mess up my life in every other category, because I thought, well, what's the point anyway?
Yeah, that's really sad that that's how you felt. Well, luckily that's not how God felt, and that was not the identity he had for you. And I believe, again, we're talking about those lies that we just believe and we just build our whole life on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, you were married before your current marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And you had told me that was not a very pleasant or healthy marriage. Could you tell us a little bit about that relationship?
Absolutely. So I graduated from college. Remember, I had been homeless the whole last semester. I somehow got a 4.0 and managed to graduate.
That's amazing.
I know, even though I never knew where I was going to sleep every night.
Wow.
And I came home, and I came home really just kind of wanting to plant roots. I had been drifting for months before that, and so I got together with this guy literally a week after I returned to Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't know at the time is that he was the rapist's best friend.
No way.
And so everything started again
Ugh.
with him. And so I decided to tell my then boyfriend the truth of what happened, because I'd started off with my usual deny, deny, deny. And then I decided, you know what? He'll understand. He loves me. I'm going to
Yeah.
tell him what happened.
Yeah.
And when I told him, all he heard was that before I denied it, and now I'm saying that something happened. Never mind that it was forceful and that I was raped.
Yeah.
Um, he didn't care about that. He just cared that I said nothing happened and now I'm saying something did. And so what happened is that he ended up literally controlling my every move.
Wow.
Who was that lipstick for? Who's that dress for? You know, everything I wore, what I did, where I went, he timed me. If I said I'm going to the gym, he would time it. And he was also very verbally abusive, very psychologically abusive. All his friends jumped in on it. And I didn't even realize what was happening to me. I think at that point, I was so lost to myself that, and it was only, and he had isolated me from my friends. So basically, I only hung out with his friends. So when we got married, I think it was literally at the altar when I said I do, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm making the biggest mistake of my life.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so it was 2 years of just verbal and psychological abuse. And yeah, it was really, really rough. So I found myself sinking into depression. I started having health issues. And yeah, I was just literally waiting to die, because I believe marriage was till death do you part. So I thought, okay, my freedom will be in death. But even then, I still didn't know Jesus.
Wow. You were literally waiting to die. That
Yeah.
just stop there for a second and put a pin in that. Like, you still wanted to follow what you thought was the right thing after all of these things that happened to you. But how sad that that's how you felt, that you had to sit and wait.
I did.
What finally got you to the point where you were no longer with that husband?
He actually abandoned the marriage. He came to me and he said that he had gotten an apartment and he was moving out. And I sat in an empty house for 2 weeks before I said anything to anyone.
Right.
I insisted that we do marriage counseling. So we went to one session where he announced that he wanted a divorce. And so basically, he was the one who walked away, but I still maintain that was the kindest thing he had ever done for me.
Absolutely. And I mean, it sounds to me like maybe God was stepping in.
Yeah, I totally believe that, because when I met Harold, I recognized that he is who God had chosen for me all the time.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So fortunately, you met your current husband, and he was from Holland, and you eventually moved there. It just sounds like it really changed a lot of your story.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's interesting because so in that little period between marriages, I went right back to my old MO, probably even worse, of being a party girl. But this time I was no respecter of marriage. So I had a lot of affairs. I was drunk all the time. I was a binge drinker. And it was really funny because there was about a week before I met Harold, something inside me said, no, stop. You need to calm down. You need to stop this. And so I just kind of stopped going out. It was a week or two. And then the night I met Harold, I actually was going out with a girlfriend who I hadn't seen in a while, and she wanted to get together. And I chose a quiet night on purpose so that I wouldn't get all crazy. And that was where I met Harold, and it was love at first sight. We
Wow.
had 5 days together, and then he had to go back. And he came back 7 weeks later to propose and meet my parents.
Wow.
So we literally got married after only seeing each other a handful of times. And I moved to Holland with him, and we had our sons. And so a big part of that whole party lifestyle stopped. Well, one, because I didn't know anybody in Holland really.
True.
And the lifestyle there is very different from Trinidad. Trinidad's island life is really, we party a lot. And so that kind of settled me down for the most part. But I still had this kind of wanderlust in my spirit, let's say, because I was never fulfilled. It was really hard to find joy because I didn't know joy. I didn't know what joy was. And so our marriage was rocky at first because we were soulmates, but we were strangers. And because I had all this baggage, I kind of threw that at him a lot.
That must have been just kind of gut-wrenching inside, that you went from, okay, this is my identity, this is my reality, I'm just waiting to die, even Jesus is against me, to wanting more, reaching out and trying to settle down, meeting your husband, being moved away to a place that was different, having this chance for a fresh start, having children, but you still didn't know your true identity, that you were a child of God. So you were restless.
Yes. Yeah. And I just could not find happiness. I was insecure. It was really not until we got to Texas that my life really started to turn in the way that it was always intended to be.
Yeah, you had told me when we talked in the pre-recording call that when you moved to Texas, you met someone that changed your life.
Yeah. Well, you could say that, yes. Well, I met Jesus.
Yeah.
And so, so we got here in Texas in 2009. And in early 2010, my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I found myself, so Harold, my husband, he went back to Holland to be with his dad. And I stayed in Texas with the boys. And so I would call every day to see how he was doing. I loved this man so much. I mean, he was such a good guy. And one day there was a phone call that was particularly distressing. He had been in pain all night, and I found myself on my knees just bawling and begging God for mercy.
Wow.
Just begging and bawling and, literally praying my guts out. And that was not something I did very often. As you can imagine. And somewhere in the middle of that crying and praying and being on the ground, I reached for the remote that was on the bed, and I turned the TV on. And there was a pastor on the TV, and he was saying at that moment, if you haven't asked Jesus into your heart, ask him now.
Wow.
And I did. And he came. I felt this literal jump in my body. It was a visceral reaction that I had. It was crazy. And the things that I wanted literally 5 minutes ago, I didn't want anymore.
Wow.
It was insane how instant that was. And that's how I knew that God was real, because I had tried everything. I had been into New Age. I had tried Buddhism. I had tried all sorts of things. In my first marriage, in college, I had seen that movie, What's Love Got to Do with It, with Tina Turner.
Uh-huh.
And she had gotten into Buddhism to get away from her abusive husband. And so I literally tried Buddhism
Wow.
to the same thing, and nothing happened. I was really into New Age stuff. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
And so here I was asking Jesus into my heart, and I'm literally feeling something happen.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, for some reason, it reminds me of the story of Elijah when he's up on Mount Carmel and he takes all of the pagan
Yes.
priests and he says, okay, you call on your God, spelled with a lowercase g, and,
Yes.
you call on your God and you have him rain down fire. And then, he waits and they wait and all day long they're calling and nothing happens. And then he builds a wooden sacrifice on stone and he has them make a trench around it and pour water on it, like I think 3 times or 4 times. And then he calls on the Lord, the God of all things, the one who will rain down fire. And when he called, fire fell and it even licked up the water. I mean, it's just amazing. And it just reminds me of that, that like all these other gods, with a lowercase g, are out there, all these other ways that people are trying to find, but the God of all things, the Lord with a capital Lord, he's able to rain down fire. He's able to do the miraculous. He's able to do above and beyond what we even could imagine.
Love that. Yeah.
Wow.
I love that story.
And I think it's just like, we look all these places and we do this sample buffet kind of all these different things that are out there, because I did the same thing. I checked all those things out and I never felt a thing. And I went to church and never felt a thing.
Yes, me too.
I just hadn't met Jesus yet. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah, it really was life-changing. And it made me aware. And I guess he knew that that's what I needed. I needed to know he was real. He was alive.
Yeah.
I needed that literal punch in the gut from him.
So once you had that change and you said a lot of things that you needed before, you didn't need anymore, or things that you thought you didn't think anymore, I would believe your marriage probably got a lot better because you weren't expecting your husband to be Jesus. You had Jesus.
Right.
And he could just be your husband. So during all that time, like how long did it take you before getting a Bible, going to Bible study?
It took me a year, an entire year, before I bought a Bible, before I went to Bible study. There's a mega church about 45 minutes drive away from us, and we had gone down there a couple times. But of course, it's a mega church, and the messages weren't very deep, I'll be honest with you. And when we couldn't make it down there, I would watch on TV. But the thing is that at first, I really needed those messages, as shallow as they were, because I needed to understand that Jesus was associated with joy and love and all the happy things, because I never associated him with those things. I associated him with suffering and somber and reverence, and so I did not connect him with a smile on my face and lightness of being and just the joy in my heart. And so I needed that for a little while, but after a while, and I know it took me a whole year, I found myself starving. I wanted more of him. I wanted to understand more. And I wanted to know what it is that I'm supposed to be believing now. If I believe in Jesus, what does that mean? And so I knew the only way I could find that out was in the Bible.
Yeah, it's funny because I too accepted Christ in my home, not at church, and had grown up a Christian, but just had never, it just was very surfacey. And my response was different. I think we're all different. That's why I asked the question. Mine was immediately, I just started like praying at the table in the kitchen before anyone was up. I started
Yeah.
like eating the Bible alive, just reading, reading, reading. But I had no idea how to apply a lot of it. And it was very confusing.
Yeah.
And that's when I needed to finally go to a Bible study or talk to some people and ask questions because it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's
It
a whole
is.
life change. Everything's upside down to how I had seen life.
Right. And I think because you grew up in the church,
Yeah.
um, you knew that the Bible was the source of information.
Yeah.
I think for me, I did not even understand the significance of the Bible. I did not get how important it was
Yeah.
to our faith, how crucial it is to our
Yeah.
faith. So for me, it was more of an afterthought. I didn't realize how important it was. Now I do, absolutely.
Well, makes sense. And like you said, God was restoring the foundation of your heart so you could even receive the word and receive the truth about him, that you could be know his love and be joyful and not
Yes.
see some of the negative things that you had associated with him. So he was tearing things down and building new things and getting you ready.
I think that's absolutely true. It's kind of like if you've been through a horrific accident and you just kind of need time
Yeah.
and it just, you have to kind of start over at the basics, and
Yeah.
maybe your diet is a liquid diet at first before it's
Yeah.
more solid.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think it's beautiful too, because I've noticed in my own life and in hearing other people's stories how God is just so gentle. You know, it's like if we're like living underground like a mole and we can't stand light, he doesn't shine a big beam of light right in our eyes. He does layer by layer by layer so we can get accustomed to the light.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, he's so kind with us and so patient.
He is, thank goodness.
Yes.
I mean, what would we do if God was like a person?
Oh
You
my
know?
God. We wouldn't
Uh,
be here, that's for sure.
a lot of my prayers in the morning start with, I don't know how you put up with us, God. I'm annoyed by myself, you know. Um,
So
so
true.
so once you finally did go get a Bible, I know you went to a Bible study. What was
Yeah.
that first Bible study like?
Well, oh my gosh, mind blowing because I had no idea what Bible study was.
Right.
So, I thought that I was going to learn what was in the Bible.
Hmm.
I did not know it was actually a Bethmore study, Beloved Disciple, on John.
Wow.
And just even learning that the people in the Bible were real people was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
I thought it was a collection of stories. I only knew the basic stories, the David and Goliath and Noah's
Mhm.
Ark kind of things. And so I never realized that these things actually happened. These people were real and they were just like us in so many ways. I thought even to get into the Bible, you had to be super amazingly saintly good,
Hmm.
or you had to be horrifically evil so that the saintly good people could overcome you with God, and that was, so it really was so beautiful to discover, wow, these people are just like us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's refreshing.
It is.
I'm often so glad that there are these examples of people doing the things that I do, yet their heart loves God and God sees that.
Yeah, absolutely. It really blew my mind. It really blew my mind just to see real people having real relationships with Jesus and being aware that I could too.
Yeah.
That was just, wow, okay, I don't have to be some extra special person
Yeah.
to have that relationship with Jesus.
And a lot of people that do grow up in the church grow up with such traditions and perceived knowledge of what the word says because that's what's told to them all the time, that they haven't really been in that deep relationship with Jesus to be hearing it directly. Do you think it was better for you not to know so much about religious traditions, but instead,
Absolutely.
have that deep relationship with Jesus instead?
Yes. So my knowledge about Jesus came from the word, not from people. I had
Yeah.
no idea what the denominations were.
Mhm.
Um, the church that I attended at the time, I just chose it because it had the same name as the street I lived on. And I had no idea what denomination it was. I didn't understand what a denomination was.
Right.
When worship music played, everyone stood straight as a pillar because apparently it was a Baptist denomination, and I was dancing away
Yeah.
and not knowing that Baptists don't dance. Like that never even occurred to me. I was just so just full of the spirit and so just happy to worship him. I can't sing, so I might as well dance. And people would come up to me all the time and be like, "Oh, I love how you dance in church." And I'm like wondering what's the big deal with that.
Yeah.
And one lady even said, "What kind of Baptist are you?" And I'm like, "I'm a Baptist. Is that what I am?" Just totally didn't know, and so I had no preconceived
Yeah.
notions of how I was supposed to behave or conduct myself or what I was supposed to say or what terminology I was supposed to use. I didn't know any of that. I just knew I love Jesus and that's what I was going to live out.
Amen. Praise God for that. That's awesome. I wish we could have some people unlearn some of that stuff because it ends up being a barrier between them and Jesus.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's
And
so freeing.
and certainly it makes it difficult when we're trying to reach people that don't go to church.
So true. So true. Yeah.
So you had a friend who ended up signing you up to be a leader at church. What happened there?
Oh my gosh, I was so mad at her. So I had done a couple Bible studies, and I was the one who asked all the dumb questions that turned out not to be such dumb questions after all, because nothing was obvious to me
Right.
In the Bible. And so I have a friend who signed me up to be a Bible study leader, and I was really, really upset. So we met with the leader of the leaders, and I told her that this was a mistake, a whole misunderstanding, and I'll just go back to being in regular Bible study with everyone else. And she said, "Well, you could come and join us. Join the leaders. You don't have to lead just yet, but just join us for our leaders meetings."
Right.
And the way that church used to do it is Bible study would be on Wednesday, and on Tuesday, all the leaders would meet and go over the Bible study homework. And then they'd go over it again with their groups on the Wednesday. And so I got Bible study twice, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And on Tuesdays, I was literally planted among cedars. I was with all these women who'd been leading Bible study for decades, literally. And so I just felt myself growing so fast because they had a godly perspective. They'd been through things, they'd lost children, they'd lost husbands, they'd been through things that were unimaginable to me, but they relied on God and his word to get through those things. And those, so I learned life through these women. And so it was really wonderful then on the Wednesday to be with a group which was women at varying stages of their walk. And so to hear where people were and so that just kind of helped me grow by leaps and bounds. So that was awesome.
That sounds amazing.
It was.
So I heard that eventually you agreed to be a co-leader.
Yes.
for a group. And then on your first day, was it?
It was the second, well, the first week had gone, and somewhere between the first and second week, I got the call. So I was a co-leader, which just meant that I made photocopies of the prayer request sheets and things like that. I wasn't doing anything. I was the secretary, basically.
Right.
And the leader of the group, it turns out her mom had an accident and broke her collarbone up in Austin. And so she had to go be with her mom and help take care of her. And so I was stuck having to lead the group. And it was really, really nerve-wracking. It was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I did it. And that's kind of how I got thrust into Bible study leadership.
And how did it go? Like, I know how you felt, but how did the women respond to your different way of leading?
It went so well. It was amazing. I think for me, the most important thing, especially God is so good. Being from Trinidad, we are naturally very gregarious. We're very outgoing, and people very familiar with people to begin with. But having a different accent and coming from a different culture and not being part of the church, it was very hard for me to fit in and do things the way everybody did. So I just never bothered. I just decided from day one, I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to do this the way that I'm led to do it, how the Spirit leads me. And so I did. And I injected pieces of my story into it, made myself vulnerable for them, and they loved it. They loved the fact that they could relax and be themselves and not be like these put together, nice, good Christian Texas ladies, you know? So it was really relaxed, and we talked about Jesus with authenticity and openness, and so it really went well.
That's amazing. And you know, we look around and see other people and think everything's so perfect. We just get this little snapshot of however they look or what their life seems like. And we start comparing or doubting. But when we're just ourselves and we know Jesus, and the Holy Spirit uses who we are, and we're willing to be vulnerable, be the first one who's brave and talk about real things, the walls just come tumbling down.
They do. They do.
I've heard so many people go wax back and forth between, some people say, to be a leader, you can't be so vulnerable. I've been told that myself. And I'm like, well, God's the one that told me to be vulnerable. So I think I'll listen to him. And I think when you share the real stuff, people see, wow, you know, you have it, quote unquote, all together, but that happened to you. And where did God come in, and how did he walk with you? You and I talked about something at the end of our pre-recording call. We talked about being yoked with Jesus.
Yes.
And I told you something I always like to share, because if you haven't heard it, it's so beautiful.
It is.
When they take oxen, and because Jesus says, you know, come follow me, you know, my yoke is easy, my burden, you know, I'll make your burden light. And what it means is when the oxen were yoked together, they were handmade yokes for just those two oxen. No yokes were alike. And if something happened and those two weren't working together anymore, then they were burned. Because they were no good for anyone else. So when Jesus says, I'm going to yoke with you, he's saying, I'm going to make this perfect connection with you that I can walk with you and help carry your burden. And it only works for you and me. And that's for every single one of us.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful, because we see that our relationship with him is custom made.
Yeah. Yeah. And it means that he values each one of us as if there was just one of us. And that's amazing to me.
Yes.
I don't get it, but I will certainly receive it.
Absolutely. It's beautiful. It's
So
not this one size fits all
that's right.
religion. It's a custom made relationship.
That's right. And so, as you shared who you really were, along with
Mm.
Christ, and you worked together, all these walls started coming down, and you started making these great connections, and you started growing as a teacher. It's funny, the
Yeah.
one who didn't even go get a Bible for a year is now teaching the Bible and writing Bible studies and speaking to women about the Bible and encouraging people through the word. It's so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, 3 years after the very first Bible study I ever did, I started writing my own, just
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
And but it's amazing what God can do and who he will use. I mean, really, Jesus's ministry was 3 years long.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that God can do with those who seem on the surface inadequate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he is the one that enables us to do whatever he asks us to do. It's
Yeah.
never really scary because most of the time I'm like, I have no idea how to do that, God, but I know you do. I hear that you're asking me to do it. So, all right, here goes. And it's amazing the things he has for us and the beautiful things that we don't even know are going to come as a result of
Oh,
just doing
absolutely.
his will.
Yes. Yeah. All we need to do is take that step in obedience.
Yeah.
Um, ask him to show us every step of the way and just do it. Whenever I know that I'm called to something, it's like, okay, let me find out about this, do a little research into it, and then figure out how to make that step. If he's calling me to write on a particular chapter or verse or book in the Bible,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, let me read it through, pray on it, and just kind of listen for what comes, what kinds of insights come into it, and do my research. And so it really is just a matter of taking that step and walking in obedience. And before you know it, he's building and growing something. And you find
Yeah.
yourself standing there like, wow, how did I get here?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty wonderful thing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's supposed to be an abundant life, an exciting life, living
Yeah,
in the kingdom, and it is.
it is. It's a really wild ride. It's totally amazing, super fun, super fulfilling, um, a little bit scary at times, but that's when we cling. That's when we hold on to him really tight. We should hold on to him really tight no matter what, whether we're scared or not. Just stay grafted to the vine. So,
But I feel like when we're scared and we really don't know how to do something, we're in the sweet spot
yes, that's so
because
true.
that we can say, okay, it's your turn to show up now because I don't know what I'm
Yes,
doing.
yes. We're so dependent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when the best stuff happens, when I have literally no idea what to do until he tells me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Every single day I start my day having no idea what I'm doing
Well,
with anything.
I'm glad I'm in good company.
Yeah, but it's beautiful to watch him show up and watch him work, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful testimony, especially those people who know my past,
Yeah.
um and they see where I am now and the things that I'm doing now. It really speaks to them because they know that that couldn't have happened because I decided that's how it would be.
That's right. And I love how God will take our broken places, our crumbled pieces, our difficult traumas, and use them for good. So, would you tell us about, and here's a perfect example. There was a woman that you had Bible study with who had y'all praying for her daughter.
Yes.
And you told me a story about one day when she approached you in the parking lot. Could you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
So I was doing a discipleship course with some ladies I had done Bible study with for some years. And so I knew her pretty well, but not close, not like let's call each other up or go to each other's houses kind of close. But
Right.
and so she kept asking us to pray for her daughter. She seemed very distressed about it, but no other details. So one day, leaving the church, I saw her in the parking lot, and I said to her, "Well, just want to let you know that I haven't stopped praying for your daughter." And she grabbed my arm and she said, "Wait, last night I was praying and asking God what to do, what to do. And the only thing that kept coming to me was talk to Tischa, talk to Tischa, talk to Tischa. So I'm going to tell you what happened to my daughter." So I said, "Okay." Um, and her daughter, then 18 years old, had gone to somebody's house with a girlfriend, and there was a guy there who took her into a bedroom and raped her.
Oh.
And the next day, the girlfriend was telling everybody in school that she slept with this guy. So the story is starting to look eerily similar to my story, except that her daughter attempted suicide with the pain and the shame of what had happened to her.
Yeah.
And as she told me this, I just burst into tears, because as open and vulnerable as I was in Bible study, the rape was still something I could not talk about.
Yeah.
It was still something that nobody knew about, because of the way things happened after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to tell her what happened to me, and she started bawling, and we both held on to each other and just cried and cried and cried in that parking lot.
Oh my gosh.
Her daughter was in the hospital for the attempt on her life. And when she came home, she was okay for a while, but then she started struggling again. And she called me up and she said, "I'm bringing her to your house right now." And I said, "Please do." And I sat down with her and I told her what had happened to me. And this beautiful young woman looked at me and said, "So you mean I'm not alone?"
Wow.
And we held on to each other and cried. Because it just changed everything for her.
Yeah. That's so powerful. And, to have gone through all that and then to be able to bridge to somebody who's struggling and let them feel heard and like someone else understands.
Yes.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. And then for me, it was suddenly what I had been through made sense.
Yeah.
This thing that I had carried, this shame and this pain and this hiding,
Yeah.
it suddenly, I saw how God used it. It was my Genesis 50:20 moment of what man meant for evil, God will use for good. And I was suddenly willing to go through it all over again if it meant helping even one person with it.
Yeah.
And so I decided at that point that there was nothing I was going to be, there was nothing I wasn't going to hold back. I wasn't going to hold back anything anymore. It was all going to go to the Lord for him to use for his glory.
Yeah.
And I gave myself permission to be free from my past. It no longer has power over me. Jesus has power over me.
Amen.
And he's going to use all of it.
Amen. That's beautiful. I mean, after all of this beautiful transformation, after seeing what God has done, if you could go back and give your younger self any advice, what would it be?
Come to Jesus. Come to Jesus and trust him. If I had gone to him so much sooner, I would have, there's so many decisions that I made that I would not have made.
Yeah.
And Jesus was the answer to every question I had. He
Yeah.
was the cure for everything that ailed me. And so, yeah, come to Jesus.
Well, that's amazing advice. I wholeheartedly agree. Um, and I want to ask you just before we're finished,
Sure.
in case there's someone listening who's going through something similar, if you could give the listeners who've been through or are currently experiencing abusive type situations like you have, do you have
Mhm.
any advice for them of what to do?
Yes. Don't go through it alone. You have to talk to someone, find someone you trust, go to a pastor, go to your doctor,
Yeah.
go to a trusted family member or friend. Do not carry it alone. Do not try to fix it on your own. Speak to someone. Um, pray, pray openly. Um, there is so much strength in the Bible that in my first marriage, my mother had given me a Bible that I had on the bookshelf, and one day I went to just take it off the shelf. Somebody had told me to read Psalm 18. I can't remember why now. And so I went up to the bookshelf, and my ex-husband literally cowered when he saw me pick up the Bible. There is a power in God's word.
Yeah.
Um, the power of creation is in God's word. He spoke the entire universe into being, and he can speak healing into your life. And
That's
so
right.
you need to trust him at his word, but you need to know the word first.
Yeah.
So speak to someone and speak to God and trust God. He is going to lead you out of it.
That is wonderful advice as well. And I'm so thankful, Tischa, for you continuing to be vulnerable, to share, to have these types of conversations and all of your ministries. And especially thankful that you were able to join me here today. I'm really grateful for the conversation. It's been an encouragement to me. I love hearing how God shows up in people's lives, and just to have that hope that we have, no matter what we're going through, it changes everything.
It does.
Yeah.
As Jesus changes everything.
Yeah. It's beautiful to see just how the tapestry of your life came together, and how things were redeemed, and how you were grown, and just how you went from where you were to being just filled and overflowing with joy and goodness. You're a light, and I'm happy to know you.
Thank you. Same here, Amanda. I mean, even how we met, it's God. It's
Yeah.
absolutely God bringing us together, and I just love how he loves his daughters. I always see that as a clear example of his love in the people that he brings into your life, and you're one of them.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel the same. And yeah, he's always working, isn't he? Every
Absolutely,
little detail.
absolutely. He's
Well,
alive.
absolutely. Well, want to thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. You know, if you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day, and go be grateful.